So if I speak like this at like this level, can you just try saying something just to test?
Yes. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew.
Hello, and welcome to the Base Creates podcast. I'm Oliver Bennett, and with me is co founder Morgan Watkins. Our mission is to rediscover, explore, and reinvigorate great texts in the Western canon to challenge the conformity of the contemporary dramatic arts. We've recently launched a new writing competition, the Agon, and we'll be performing extracts from our 6 finalists on the 13th of September in Hackney Wick. Look on our social media and website to get your tickets, and you will vote on the winner. Today, we are delighted to be speaking to Steven Berkoff, writer, actor, and director. Steven is a towering figure in the last 70 years of British theatre, TV, and film. He was born in Stepney in 1937 into a Jewish family and was known as Leslie growing up. During World War II, he was evacuated from London's East End to Luton, along with his mother and his sister. Steven studied drama at Webber Douglas in London and later trained in physical theatre and mime in Paris at Lecoq. Starting out as an actor in rep companies, his earliest plays were adaptations of works by Kafka, and he's since written many original plays, including East, Greek, West, Sink the Belgrano, as well as other adaptations of Aeschylus, Edgar Allan Poe, and Oscar Wilde. He's played a Bond villain, he's worked with Stanley Kubrick twice, and that is just skimming the surface of his many achievements. So, Steven, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us
Oh, you're
today.
very welcome. Thank you.
So when me and Morgan set up the Base Creates, we had you in mind as like a touchstone kind of early on because of what we wanted to do. It felt like it matched with what you were doing and with your
Yes.
spirit and with your energy. We felt like you had some of the visceral power that British theatre was lacking. And I think young actors, young theatre makers can learn a lot from your example. Why don't we start off by talking about your early life? Obviously, you grew up in Stepney, not far from where we are now, and the East End is obviously very important to you and your work.
Yes, well, that was my first knowledge of life and family and society and social life was from the East End of London. And that was initially a little short-lived because of the war, and we were evacuated to Luton in Bedfordshire. And so my first actual knowledge of myself and my world started in Luton. So as far as I was concerned, I was somehow born in Luton. I didn't know anything about the East End because I was only there 2 or 3 years initially. And so being brought up in Luton, it was then very much a country town, and I went to school there, and I adapted the habits and culture and the various forms of society that you did as a child, and going to the playgrounds and the schools and the little cinemas, and I was kind of brought up as a kind of a country boy. So then, when the war ended, we were asked or advised, or my family thought it would be good to return to the East End. And so it was the East End that they probably hardly could recognize because it was really a smashed, bombed out war zone. And there were certain streets that still survived, but other areas were just bomb sites and just the remains of skeletons of buildings of bricks. And inside them, they would have these huge water tanks, which they used to put out fires during the bombing of the East End. And I found those water tanks quite fascinating because on them they had developed a whole society of insects, of like water skaters. And they would skate across And that was, to me, quite wonderful. And I suddenly discovered, I thought the East End then was very cosmopolitan, kind of, it was rich in its variety, it was dynamic. Uh, there was a cinema at every few streets. What I found interesting is that the society then, or the various people who were administrating the councils, decided that since it was a rather defunct area that would encourage crime and other nefarious activities, they would organize clubs. And these clubs were every few streets. There was a boys' club, and there was this club called the Oxford and St George in Berners Street, and there were so many other clubs and names I can't remember at the moment, but there was always somewhere to go. And so the club for me was a wonderful opportunity to just meet other young guys and to do various things like, you could do uh, a bit of sports or play football on the roof or do painting workshops, gymnastics. So I loved doing the painting workshops and mixing with the people. So there was never any sense of loneliness.
Can I just quickly backtrack a tiny bit to the war? So
Yes.
this is you when you came to sort of consciousness, you were probably about 3-4 years old. You were in Luton, and the world was at war.
Yes,
And were you aware of that? Was it
very much so.
right? Yeah.
Oh, very much so.
And yeah, so you just that was just very present that we were at war. And was there a sense of fear? It just fascinates me that you were sort of born into that.
Yes,
When you woke up to reality.
I woke up to it, yes, every day. It was on a daily basis. Because I'd wake up, it was usually quite early. I like to get up early. In those days, see what's going on in the world. And then my mum would have the fire on because in Luton, my father was living with us and my sister, so it was more or less like a family. And the radio was on. And every morning was the same news. Today, the RAF has downed 45 German Messerschmitts, and with a loss of only 3. And then the next morning would be today, bombing was carried out in Darmstadt, Düsseldorf, Wiesbaden, blah, 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 blah. And so I thought, well, we're the good guys, we're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And so the war was a constant factor because that's the first thing you heard in the morning when you woke up was the war. And it was a bit of fun. Obviously, we're going to win because we're the good guys. Never occurred to us.
And you just assumed you were going to win. Was there a fear of what if we lose this war? What could happen then?
None at all.
You just thought we're going to win. And your family were Jewish,
yes,
right? So were they aware of what was happening at this point?
They were, absolutely. They were aware. They weren't aware of it in the detail
right
that came out after the war, but they were aware that they were being selected and abused and sent to what they thought was work camps.
Right.
I don't think they were aware that there were gas chambers, although maybe certain rumors were getting out that they were victims of terrible murderous attacks by the Germans, including shootings and starvation. But I think the Germans tried to keep the gas chambers very, very secret.
Yeah.
Although people who did escape did reveal this to the British politicians and begged the Prime Minister and other people, Foreign Minister Secretary, to please bomb. There may be some casualties amongst the Jews who were there that day, but every day thousands were being sent to these areas. And they begged over and over again, please bomb Auschwitz, please bomb Treblinka, please bomb other Dachau, all this. And they said, well, we want to win the war and we can't afford to divert valuable munitions and soldiers to these places, but by winning the war, we will close them. But they said, but in the meantime, they're being gassed sometimes at the rate of 10 to 20,000 a day. Yes, well, we are looking into it, we are, but they never bombed them.
Right.
It would be so simple a thing to have done. One plane could have done it. 2, 3, 4 planes, just a diversion, especially to Treblinka in Poland. Just bombed the thing to bits. And they never did, although they knew about them. Not only that, they could see them because these camps were stretched out over miles. And they never did that. So, but anyway, all we knew of the war was of the persecution, but we didn't know much else. And
you thought we're going to. I'm just going to just make sure that's. And you thought we were going to win this. There was just a sense of optimism, even.
Well, it was taken for granted
Right.
because you live in a child's sense of values, and a child's values are from fairy tales, from children's stories, where the good person obviously always is the one who shall surmount and conquer the evil one. In all children's stories, it's always the good guy, the good boy, that beats the giant or the monster or the wicked fairy. That's the nature that we think that as we're good, it's almost impossible that we should be tormented or tortured or killed. So even when I went out during the afternoon, sometimes in Luton, I heard the sirens go. It's a very peculiar sound. Like, that means get to your homes. Get by looking up for the planes. I think I heard the sirens, and I just walked home. They're not going to bomb me because we're the good guys. Didn't bother me. And the sirens continued, and I thought the streets had been empty and no one's around. So I went to the park, went on the swing. I thought I don't have any competition. I can get in the swing and the roundabout, and then I went home.
So it was lovely and peaceful everywhere because everyone had run home. So
yes, exactly.
It's a bit like during COVID, wasn't it? Some people were going for walks in London because no one was there.
Yeah.
So this is okay. So I feel like we could spend 2-3 hours talking about Stepney in the 40s and 50s, and I sort of want to, but
let's go jump on.
Let's jump on. So when and we'll move towards your sort of dramatic training. And when did you read a lot when you were young, and what kind of stuff were you reading? And when did you take an interest in drama? And when did you think that being an actor was a sort of career choice?
Well, in the wartime, one of the benefits, if you like, that come out of that is that your only opportunity to nourish yourself and to escape from it is to go to the movies and to read. There was no TV then. Mm-hmm. And he'll hear the radio. So for some reason, the movies, even during the war, the cinemas were all open, unless there was a bombing in that town, of course. But so there was a great opportunity to see the massive amount of movies. And because of the war, there were obviously less British movies being made. So we were less affected by any English or British culture. So the only culture would come with one or two little British films was the American drama, which was tremendous and vital and exciting and exuberant and imaginative. So we spent our time maybe 2 or 3 times a week, go with Mum to the movie house. And then she was in a way quite bright because she'd take me to the local library. There's always a children's section, and you could take out 2 books a week. So apart from the movies, which I loved going to, I could always go to the library and get my books. And so I started reading. And I loved reading and then going back to the library, getting out anything. I didn't mind what I read, but I started to take an interest in sort of unusual literature. And what appealed to me at that time was a book of short stories. I loved the short stories. And there was a book that really affected me, and which I took out, was called The Supernatural Omnibus. And it was a collection of maybe 20 or 30 short stories, horror stories. But they were all written by major writers who had gone into that area, somebody like Edgar Allan Poe or Charles Dickens. And I don't know, I can't remember the other names, but I absorbed these stories and found them so a little bit frightening. Sometimes I couldn't read them and I'm just going to bed, but I would read them. And the thing about these horror stories is, unlike any other naturalistic literature, these were so inventive and so bizarre and so curious. And they dealt in ideas that were beyond your norm of strange creatures, strange monsters, weird imps and fairies and satyrs. And so I read these stories and I found I was quite absorbed by them. So when I went to try to read normal, say, naturalistic writing, they didn't touch me. I found them a little dull. But I did read some other books, of course.
And did you read stories from the Bible or the Torah?
Well, I went to Torah classes, and we always read and told stories from the Bible.
Right. Okay.
So that was always exciting.
Do you remember first reading any Shakespeare or the Greeks?
Yes, I do. I was reading these various books and um, horror stories, fiction, non-fiction, and I never read any Shakespeare, of course, because I saw a book and it had these old-fashioned Victorian paintings. So I thought, oh, that belongs to another world. So I paid no attention to it. So one day, when I was feeling I was not getting anywhere, well, not improving myself, way after I left school, and I was just shunting around. I had no inspiration from my teachers or from my father, and so all that was important was that I should earn a living so I could give my mother a weekly wage. It didn't matter what you did. It didn't matter as long as you had a job. So the world was your oyster. At the same time, it was your dustbin. Now, if you were one of the better boys, I worked very hard at school, except I changed schools, and the second school was very negative to me, and I didn't find anything that appealed to me there. I didn't get on very well at all. So I didn't, have any opportunity to even think about university. To me, it seems, God, not in more school after 15 or 16. No, I couldn't, to get to work. So I could earn wages. And part of my prime motive of earning money was that I could take a girl out to the movies.
Yeah.
That was so important. Maybe for a coffee or something, a bite to eat, without having to ask her to share. That's humiliating.
Yeah, I remember that was a big thing when I was young.
Yeah, big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you didn't like to ask, but without asking, you'd be broke. You had to try. And I even fell out with one girl because I said, I'm sorry, could you play towards him? And she didn't like me after that. So, so I just took any job. And I was just, my university was picking up the evening news, Evening Standard, office boy wanted. You know, 9 to 5, 5-day week. That's fine. I just go in, and there was an office and lots of people working. And they gave me papers. Say, well, this you have to sort this out by everything that's to do with this, you put in this box, everything to do with that. I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know what I was doing. I just sat there, just putting papers here. It was just insane. I couldn't.
But you were getting paid.
Only for the week, when they saw I was useless.
So just to recap, Stephen. So there was cinema. You had access to the cinema, and you were seeing these lots of American films that were sort of vital and exciting. And you had access to a library, and you would have been sort of read Bible stories and Torah classes. So you would have had a kind of foundation in kind of classic biblical theological literature.
Yes.
And you read this book called the Omnibus. What's it called?
Supernatural Omnibus.
The Supernatural Omnibus. Okay.
And I went in for my exams, and I'm going waffling on here, and I did very well. And I always did well if the teacher seemed half sane, because in those days they were a bit balmy, because all of the young teachers been killed off in the war.
Yes.
So they had the only people who didn't go to the war were the old people. So we had these old men teaching these young children. But the teacher that appealed to me was an English teacher. I adored him. His name was Mr. Shivers. And then I've got a report, said in English, top boy, imagine that. Very good work indeed. Wow, top boy.
Yes.
That's in English. And in French, 90 out of 100. I love the idea of learning to speak in another tongue. To me, that was so thrilling that when I came to school that first day, when we were told we'd be studying language, or which you want to do, German or French, and I chose French. And when we started the French, and I learned the word, whatever it was, the verbs, je vais, tu vas, va, and all these. I thought, God, I'm learning another language. I was learning the mysteries of human existence. I am learning to speak in a foreign tongue. That to me was thrilling. So on the first day, the teacher said, well, thank you all. It's been a very good start. We'll see you all tomorrow. And then good night, have a good evening. I said, sir, don't we have any homework? Because that I thought was part of you having a briefcase. And he looked surprised. I thought that was normal. So he said to the class, oh, he would like homework. Is anyone else here who'd like some homework? And nobody put their hands up, maybe 2 or 3. So well, I'll give you a little test. You'll describe for me this or that. So I wrote that down, my homework, got of that. And then I was always happy to have homework in the beginning. But then when we had the maths classes, science.
You didn't enjoy that?
Horrible.
Oh, bloody, I couldn't cope with that.
I wish I could go back and do maths and science again, because I've found a love for it as I've got older.
It's amazing how many actors you speak to who, at that age, the key thing for them was having a really great English teacher.
Yes.
Most actors I speak to, exactly the same.
Isn't that
They were
interesting?
Like, that was the bulb that went off.
Also, what I thought was a really interesting point about the lack of good teachers because of the war.
Yes.
I remember, I think it was Peter Hitchens saying, you cannot describe how many great men we lost during that period, and how devastating that is to a country. And we've never recovered from it, which is
true, absolutely true.
So great. So you get out, you get a job, you can take a girl out. So it is a huge thing for young men to be able to have a bit of money, pay for their, and
it's so vital.
the other side of it, when men don't have any money or they haven't got any work, how devastating that is to their sort of sense of masculinity or sense of purpose and
totally.
vitality. So okay, so you get some, you have to get some work. It doesn't go so well, but you get a bit of money, and then so if we can move into, like, you trained at Webber Douglas as an actor, right?
Yes.
And so, what age did you go to Webber Douglas?
21.
So you were at Webber Douglas in 21, and you did was it 3-year training?
No, it was only a year.
It was a year, and then you went to Lecoq.
And then I did a summer course at Lecoq.
I see. Okay, so you sort of that was quite. And you did 1 year at Webber Douglas, then went straight over to Paris. So it was all
what
done
happened?
in a year.
I did 5 years of working, and then I found the only place I could work that made sense is to be a shop assistant, a salesman.
Mm-hmm.
So I would get jobs in menswear shops.
Oh, yeah.
And, that was easy because the people come in and, go, good morning, sir, can I help you? Always looks very beautiful. And then you're playing with ties and nice shirt to go with it, sir, and all that.
And this is Les in East has this job, right?
That was a purging of the horror of a certain menswear shop. You have to be in at 9, though nobody's even awake at 9. You're just standing around, just kind of putting the sleeves in between the jackets so they all look neat, or then taking the drawers out, taking out the shirts, dusting the drawers, putting the shirts back, taking the ties out, putting them in all in a neat pattern. Your life was dead, and I thought of, while I'm doing this, I'm thinking of the people at Oxford reading Yeats and Wordsworth and Longfellow, and I'm putting ties. That's all I'm doing. That's all. But I didn't want to be as menswear salesman anymore. And I felt, I could do better than this. And so I wrote to all the film companies around England, please, I'm looking for a job as an actor. Because I was so naive. This is not the way. You have to have an agent, you have to have representation, you have to have training. But I didn't know this because nobody told me fuck all. So, and then one person actually was a bit amazed. Said, you can't just write. You have to have experience. Now, young man, I suggest you learn something. Go, and there's a very good evening class for young working boys who've maybe passed the time of advancing to university and you've missed the boat, so to speak. They're evening classes at the City Literary Institute in Holborn. Oh, I thought, what's a lovely letter. Still got the letter. So I went to the City Lit, and they said, oh, yes, there's 3 terms, and it's £5 a term. And you do drama, movement, speech, mime, text, Shakespeare, classics, modern, and you do it to 3. I thought, how exciting. And I was working in my menswear shop, I had some money, gave the £5. And then the term started. It was the evening, so I could kept my day job. Then I went to the City Lit, and I went to the classroom, and all the people were sitting on the 2 sides of the room, and none of them had a tie. You had sweaters and roll-ups, and roll-up sweaters and open shirts, and they looked like, and I was wearing a jacket and tie because I was still stuck. So that was the last time I wore a jacket and tie. So I saw it, and then the man came in and said, oh, wonderful, I'm glad you're all here, now we're going to start. And when I heard him, he said, I just want you to walk across the room, but have something in your mind that anyone watching you can tell. You're worried, you're concerned, you're happy, you're expecting. So lovely exercise. So I walked across the room and I thought, I'm in the theatre. Oh, this is wonderful. And I looked at all the people, they all looked normal. And the menswear shop I was working in, it was a very nice owner. And it was a lovely shop. It was in Chelsea. And funnily enough, when I was working there, the Royal Court was at the other end of the street. and it had Look Back in Anger. So I thought, well, that's a nice title, okay. And I was working in this menswear shop. But they had as a manager, always you have a good owner. The manager was such an imbecilic, total idiot, and kind of like he thought he was in the army. He could never even call me my name. He'd always call me by my surname. Berkoff, go do the Berkoff. Can't say Stephen, how are you? So I loathed him with an insurmountable rage. But then I went to the City Lit and I started to suddenly learn. And then one day they gave us speeches, a little speech of this, and Tennessee Williams, and something from Noel Coward, a bit of this, the other. But I didn't like them because they're just little bits. So one day he said, choose a speech, like we call it a soliloquy, and come back next week. Look at the play, find an interesting that will reflect and your character, and which you can enhance by your own personal experience and put that into it. So it's wonderful. So we went home, and I was looking through the plays. I saw 3 lines and 4 lines and 6 lines, and then I can't. This is so tedious. Then one of the books I had been reading was the short stories of Franz Kafka. Just came across him by accident, actually. But I started reading these stories, and they were so gripping, so compelling, so life affirming, so unbelievably imaginative. I just fed on these stories. I thought there was nothing greater than Kafka. And I thought, oh, maybe I could use one of the stories. That's a good piece. It's where you put your soul into it. So there was this story called The Bucket Rider. And it's a story of a man, it's probably during the time of severe famine in Prague, who sat in his room. He didn't have work, and he's so cold. And he needed coal, but he didn't have enough money. And he looked at his bucket, and it's empty bucket. He thought, oh, I'll go with my bucket to the coal dealer because he'll feel pity for me. He may feel sorry. He may have anguish for him and give me a little bit of coal. And the bucket's so light, I can ride on it. So he opens the window, he gets the bucket, and suddenly he's riding through the streets. Oh, and then through the streets he goes at a regular canter. Sometimes he's raised as high as the first story of a house. Never does he sink to the ground floor. At last, he floats at an extraordinary height above the vaulted cellar of the coal dealer, who he sees far below, sitting at his desk where he is writing. He had opened the window to let out the excessive heat. So he begs, oh, coal dealer, give me a little coal. My bucket is so light I can ride on it. Oh, please be kind. When I can, I'll pay you. The coal dealer put his hand to his ear. Do I hear something? He throws the question over his shoulder to his wife. Do I hear something, a customer? So I thought this is the most wonderful story I've ever read. So I came in, City Lit. He said, anybody got their piece? And somebody got up and they did a little bit. And I remember the guy doing a little bit of Lancelot Gobbo and from the Merchant of Venice and this. So I said, yes, I've got one. I had learned it. There's quite a lot to learn in a week. I got up and I started the first line. Coal, all spent, the bucket empty, the shovel useless, the stove breathing out cold. Now, Berkoff, Stephen, you said a play. You know the players, play. You have characters who speak to each other, who answer each other. It's a play. We don't want short stories. That doesn't make any sense. So I looked at him. I thought, oh, I'm going to find a play. Now, the irony is that the very first show I did in the West End was The Bucket Rider. I did it along with several other pieces of a one-man show.
Yeah.
So I did The Bucket Rider, and I did a piece called Dog, where I impersonated a pit bull, and I did a bit of Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, put together, did it at the Edinburgh Festival. And I've never forgotten that man saying, no,
Yep.
but that, and then grabbing hold of Kafka, and I fed on him. I ate him. I somehow went into my bloodstream, and then I adapted by myself this great novel of the trial.
And so and this is a great lesson, isn't it, for creatives? Is sort of having
Yes.
the conviction to stick to your style and what you believe and what you want to do artistically.
Yes.
So if we can, we're like, in my head, I'm like late 50s, early 60s
Yes.
now, right? Okay, Ollie, I wondered if you could like take us through the plays now. If we could sort of structure that. So
should we?
So we're at,
So,
we've
yeah,
got
let's-
Dog and Metamorphosis,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we kind of we're moving on to East, and we
Do,
can
do.
perhaps work our way through the plays.
Yeah, just
Yes.
a few key plays. So we actually, Morgan and I and a few other actor friends, this week in preparation for seeing you, we actually had a little reading online of East to refresh ourselves.
We'll send you the audio of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you
It
Was
was a
really
cold
good.
read. So.
It was pretty good. We were kind of, it was a cold read. We were sort of sight reading. But the play came across amazingly. And we were just so kind of struck by obviously the language, the rhythm of the language, the intensity, the savageness, the grotesqueness. It was
Wonderful.
amazing.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, it feels like this was like a very important early play of yours.
Well, yes, it was the first play I ever wrote, in one sense, because when I started, and I had then been doing rep for a number of years, and I felt that the British drama was good. Some of the modern plays were very, very good, but they didn't touch me in those areas where I lived in fantasy, in the imagination, which I had got when I used to see. That started to hook me, of course, and that mime was seeing a mime artist called Marcel Marceau. And when I saw him that he could make solids out of space, I thought, this is theatre. When he moved, called the marche sur place, moving, and you think he's walking and based on the same spot. Oh, and then he held objects and that you felt he had, you could see them. I thought, this is magic. Then I went to the theatre sometimes. A friend took me and I thought, something like The Rivals with Lawrence Harvey, and they were walking up and down the stage talking. Walking here, then sat there, then got up and then had a drink there, then got up and sat. I thought, you load of fucking bores. But seeing Marceau, he was magic. So one day, because I was now quite loyal fan of the City Literary Institute, I used to follow what sometimes they had guest teachers doing ballet for beginners. I thought I did that, thought it would help my movement. And then there was a notice saying a woman who was the main student, one of the leading students of Jacques Lecoq, is coming to London to teach his Lecoq mime techniques. I thought, oh, that would be good. I could do the bit like Marceau. So her name was Claude Chagrin. So I came to the class and I was very keen. So keen. I followed every single glimmer of what she was teaching us. The master, the walking on space, a fixed point, and all sorts of things. And I followed them all. And I thought, oh, she and I got on very, very well. And then I thought I want to somehow see how I could use that in the theatre. So when I started, I couldn't use that in plays by, you know, John Osborne or Pinter Bit maybe, or whoever the other Graham Greene or Chekhov, or they would, even reading them, often would fall asleep. But when I saw mime, I thought, this is astounding. So I did her classes, but I couldn't find I never did a play. I've never done a play, not for years. I would take, as I did at City Lit when I was 18, adapt. So one day I was starting to teach mime, because I went back to Webber-D because I wasn't working as an actor. And I said I could teach mime because I've taken a mime classes and I also went to Paris to study with the master himself, Jacques Lecoq, in his school. He has a summer course.
And he was teaching there.
Yes.
And what was he like, Lecoq?
Phenomenal.
Right.
Handsome, strong, and with an energy that was endless. Because he's been doing a 3-year teaching, and in the summer we have off, he then opened a summer school. And so I booked and paid for my, it wasn't cheap, for the summer school. And I learned as much as I could that I had learned already from a year with the Claude Chagrin. So I was teaching at Webber-D, mime. And then one day the teacher, very, very pleasant chap, can't remember his name at the moment, said, Steve, would you like to do a play? It might be interesting, your ideas. So I said, play? Yes. Okay, what can I do? So I then thought, I won't do a play, I'll adapt a novel. Why I did that? Because in a play you have only 3, 4, 5, 6 people. But the classes, in my classes, there were a dozen actors and actresses. So if you do a play, you do a scene as a 2 people, and everybody's sitting there watching. It's very interesting. And then maybe they do a bit. Then you do another part with 3 people. But I thought, there's 12 people who've paid all this money. I will use all of them. So I said, we're going to start with a trial. Get a book. You maybe can buy a paperback, it's cheaper, but they all turned up the next day with the books, very good. And then I had the book, I hadn't written anything. Just go to the first page where it says, read the line. Somebody must have been lying about Joseph K., for without having done anything wrong, he was arrested one fine morning. His landlady's cook, who normally bought his breakfast at 8 a.m., failed to appear. That had never happened before. Kay waited a moment longer. People opposite seemed to be staring at him with a distinct curiosity. Then, feeling hungry and put out, he rang the bell. We will now act that out. I didn't know, but I had the confidence because of Lecoq's teaching. I said, there's a room. I want you to represent the room. You're just standing there, the room. Then, you are Joseph K., picked out a very good actor, reading the lines. He rang the bell. Now you 2 at the back, you represent the doors. So let's see you being a pair of swing doors. Now you 2 will be the detectives coming in. So I ring the bell, the doors open slowly. Slowly from the wall you become the door. Then the other actors come in. As they come in, you shut the door. You become the spectator. Then just improvise. You rang? Slowly. I rang for the maid. He says he rang for the maid. Do I look like the maid? No. Do you? Suddenly, the air turned icy. All these actors they were turned on by the speed. Because it didn't say, you rang for. It had to be out of norm. When you go out of normal rhythm, you incite psychic powers, whether it's over quick or whether it's super slow. You incite interior powers. And these, what makes it so exciting. So we did that. And then we had the men come in and slowly we improvise. And they say, make up anything. Well, search the room. So they go around. And then, as a mime, you use the actor as the material. So Joseph K. suddenly became the cupboard. They opened the cupboard. Oh, what do we have in here? And he became the coat in the cupboard. But it all worked. If it's slow and defined, it worked. So I then got home. I started writing it out. That took me weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, not months. But we could only start off with an improvisation. So that was my first production of Kafka's The Trial at the Webber Douglas. And it was very good, Joseph K. And they were quite good, but they weren't up to the standard needed for this kind of technique. But they were all right just to start. But from then on, I only adapted books. So then I adapted, of course, Metamorphosis. Man who changes into an insect. That was frighteningly exciting. And then I thought, well, let me tackle a bit of Shakespeare. Because Macbeth, you could do a lot of movement with Macbeth. Oh, the castle walls, all the weapons as they're going through the killings, could be the floating dagger, all these things. And then I did that, and then
you wrote a version of Macbeth?
yes,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
And
I
this
did.
is all you as a director, adapter.
Yes,
Are you
director.
acting in.
Yes, I played Macbeth.
This is the thing, Stephen. When we were preparing to talk to you, your career is just so brilliantly dense that there's just so many things we were trying to work out how to get in. We were like, right, how are we going to get to? So you played Hamlet as well, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Was this and then you wrote the book I Am Hamlet, which
Yes.
is your thoughts sort of on scene by
It was
scene?
a description of the play and the production and my thoughts on Hamlet. I say I am Hamlet because I did it. And there was this weird little critic called Nick de Jong, though he became friendly afterwards. They do if you attack them, because you're not supposed to talk to critics.
Yeah.
Or you're supposed to ignore them if they're good or they're bad. I would talk to them. Why did you do this?
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly they felt they were effective enough, and they moved you, and they could hurt you, and then they became friendly. So
Would you write to them?
yeah, all right to them,
Write to them.
continuously.
In response to their reviews?
Yes,
You'd write to them and say, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
very often, yes.
Yeah.
And then
We should bring that back as a technique.
Writing scripts.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we should do that.
And often they loved getting those letters from actors who poured their heart out to them. And so I did Hamlet because I thought, oh, Hamlet, what an opportunity for mine. And we did it at the Roundhouse in London. Many people thought it was astounding, the way we created the castle.
You did it at the Roundhouse in Chalk Farm?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was fantastic. Of course, we're doing Hamlet. So I got a rehearsal room in Holborn. I noticed in the rehearsal room they had a floor which was used for basketball. So they had lines this way, a circle in the middle. I thought that looks like a ground plan of a castle. There's a line here. So let's follow only the lines. And then we'll have chairs on three sides. So we just started with the chairs. And I thought, the most exciting moment in the theatre is when nothing happens. So I have these 12 actors sitting in the chairs, 8 actors, and then 2 or 3. And then we all sat there. And I thought, when you see an orchestra, they don't have to put funny hats on and paddings and costing for. They all wear, no matter what they're playing, they wear dress suits, black suits and white or black tie. We're all being in dress suits. Had the 10 actors, except for Hamlet, I think he should be more like a civilian. So I had the actors just sitting there in dress suits, and they looked magnificent. So we started, and then it was just silence. Then I just wanted the wind, the atmosphere of a castle, just to about 10 people. The atmosphere started. Then always have music. That is the kind of leader, the instigator, and wakes up the imagination. So we had suddenly a drum and bang! The whole audience, of course, jumped. And then starts the play. 2 actors slowly got up and then walked diagonally down the stage till they meet each other. As they meet each other, one just says, "Who's there? Stand and unfold yourself." "It's you. You come late upon your watch." So the audience for this time, and then Horatius coming, but he's not living in the castle. He has to climb. So he climbs the stairs in mind as he's going up.
This is wonderful.
Going up. He says, "Oh, you come late upon your watch." He says, "Has the thing appeared again tonight?" "No, we have not seen him." So they have this little chat. But then, "Look, my lord, it comes." One of the actors, one of the chairs, playing the ghost, suddenly gets up and he walks, and they all follow him. And they say, "Oh, go on, whatever the lines are, try fight them with your spear, nothing happens." Then, that's over. But the audience is totally on their toes, totally fascinated. We take the chairs and make them into a circle. Then we introduce to Claudius. Bit of silence. And then he starts. "Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be strong. And though we did this and that, all in this thing." Ophelia is just on the side, typing out the memo as he's speaking. And so that's how we created it.
And you directed this?
Yeah.
And you were playing Hamlet?
Yes.
Wonderful.
It was wonderful.
I wish. It sounds like an incredible production.
Is there a recording of it?
No, we didn't record in those days, unfortunately. I've got a recording of Coriolanus, which we did similar techniques. But we did it, and I'm sorry, I'll just finish.
Yeah.
At the Roundhouse, the critics shat on it. We did it in the round, see, because of the chairs on 4 sides for the Roundhouse, 3 sides for proscenium art. So we had 4 sides. we did it, all just very enthusiastic. And then one night, as I'm on the stage and can see the whole audience, and I suddenly saw, because this is what happens when you work in the West End, I see Dustin Hoffman in the third row. But because the play is my salvation, so I'm not made nervous, that these techniques empower you because they're different, they're unusual, they inspire the audience, they stimulate the audience. You don't need to be nervous. You can be nervous in naturalistic plays. So Dustin Hoffman. So then when he was in, I went into superdrive because I had the scene with Gertrude. And then I said, look here upon this picture and on this, the counterfeit resemblance of two brothers. See what a grace was seated on that, the whole thing. That was done so simply because.
And you, Dustin Hoffman was sitting in what, third row, did you say? And you were kind of half giving it some to sort of show off to him.
Totally.
Yeah.
I gave it the full works.
Yeah, that's. I worked with Michael Feast years ago, and he said he did a play at the Royal Court, and someone had told him that Bob Dylan and Marlon Brando were in that night. Right, and so he said he went out and he gave the whole show to Brando and Bob Dylan, and they weren't there. They weren't even in the theatre. Someone tricked him, but it's just really funny. I once did a play, and Ken Loach was in the audience.
Oh yeah,
and I remember, and I'd written to him, and I remember giving like an incredibly sort of as Loachian performance as I could try and give that night. So,
did you meet Dustin Hoffman after?
Yeah, that's what he did. Yeah. This is what the whole thing. We finished. And there was a reasonable house, maybe half full, because the critics had already slashed us. So I go to my dressing room, I'm waiting. Come in. Dustin, how wonderful to see you. Well, thank you, that's a wonderful thing. I enjoyed that. And at the same time, he said to say, I saw the Hamlet with Jonathan Pryce at the Royal Court. He did a Hamlet there. And his performance as Hamlet was quite in places remarkable because he had that production had one idea, and that was when he sees the ghost, he absorbs the ghost. So when he's saying, oh, Father, beloved spirit, and the ghost says, mock me, I will. Yeah, this is quite marvelous. But that was otherwise it was very conventional production.
So
then he came in, he said, I've just seen the one of the Royal Court, but this is stuck on another level. This is amazing. So bless you, thank you. Come to the bar and have a drink. I went to the bar. Sorry, we're closed now. But it's not even 11, we've just come off stage. Yeah, but nobody comes after the interval. There's not enough people. So they made me ashamed to be English. She made me ashamed to be in English in this country.
This is in Chalk Farm.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman standing there. Never mind, we go out, we'll have a cigarette. So go outside, it's freezing outside. So we had to have a chat. Well, these are the actors, and they're all, it was a wonderful show. Thank you. I'll come again. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy. That's what they said. Instead of saying, of course, we'll open the bar. They're so scumbags. Some woman producer ran it. She was a scumbag, like you cannot believe. So,
yes.
1 week later,
yes,
we're doing it. The audience is thinned out to maybe a quarter. I'm doing the play, still giving it all the bottle I could. Suddenly, he's in there again. He's come back again. So I thought, I'm going to give it the full welly. I've got Linda Marlowe as Gertrude.
Hoffman's come back?
Yes, come back, definitely, second time. He had to bring, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He wanted it so unusual. So I had to lend him all out and
So
say,
you're thinking, because the first time you're trying to impress him, but this time you thought that you were even trying to up it.
up it. Because it was so empty, the theatre. So I went crashing through it, howling. I did everything. And then at the end, the few people said, bravo, cheers, a little bit. I went back to my dressing room, waiting for the inevitable knock. He never came back because he was ashamed for me. He probably, as she didn't want. So that was how I started. And then one day, a friend, colleague, and a fellow actor, he said, why don't you write something original? I said, what can be more original? It's great to adapt, Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart, Kafka. This is the most, but you could write. So I had to think. I said, I don't have anything at all original in my head. I have nothing. I am an interpreter of the great artists of the past. These people that need to be heard, seen, felt, lived, shown. But I think I'll have a think. So I thought, I'll write an original play. What can I write? A East End play called East. And I'll take the lives of 5 characters in my family and describe the greatest moments of their life, them series of soliloquies, and then how they met. And so I wrote down all the monologues, and then some of it was too severe, too horrible. So I gave it to an actor. Said, "Oh, it's good, but it's a bit much." So I changed it and wrote it in verse. I thought this will give it, even the foulest bits, a kind of validity. So when the 2 guys on the stage by themselves, to introduce themselves, I thought I'd write, donate a snap, Mike. Okay, Les, I'll bung me a snout. Now you know our names. That's how it started. Mike's okay. After the Holy Saint. That's Marks and Spencer's. It's St. Michael, you see. Their clothing is called St. Michael. After the Holy Saint. Mike with a hard K like a kick swift. Not mad about Les. It's soft. It's gooey. But choose it I did not. In my mother's hot womb did she curse this name on me. It's my handle. But under the soft, it's spiky. Under the pillow, it's sharp. Concealed instrument, offensive weapon, lies waiting. Oh, he doth bestride commercial rope like a colossus. So that's how it started.
This is great. We read this the other night.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Nowhere near as good as that, I will say.
No, because they play it too naturalistic. They're still clinging to the old style. So I said, don't play it cockney. Play it like you're doing Shakespeare.
Right.
Donate a snap, Mike. So it's maybe a tinge here, a little London sound. Yeah, he destroyed.
But you're looking for that heightened, non-natural.
Heightened, absolutely.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating as well is when you said you put it in verse to give it validity. It's like you gave them a frame that they'll find valid, and then you sort of smuggle into that frame like something really.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it was so fascinating reading that the other day with those actors, and there was we actually had a really interesting discussion afterwards. We were talking about it, and some of the actors were saying, obviously it was electrifying text, but they felt like it was a real critique of these characters, Mike and Les, right? These sort of horrible men and everything like that.
Oh, they weren't, though, not at all.
what I was, this is what I was saying, and Morgan was saying as well. Like there's so much love and like honesty and transparency and
Oh God,
vibrancy in
yes,
these
yes,
characters. It's not a critique of these
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they're violent, they're grotesque, but
yes.
they're real and they're honest and they're
People,
alive.
basically, what's happened is, well, like with many things that have happened, but we are stuck. Lovies and actors are stuck in this framework of analysis that they cannot get out of, and it's this sort of social justice kind of everything must be like, oh, isn't it? And they've been let down, and actually, if only we could, and rather it just being like free art and exploration of characters. And one thing, and sometimes it is that some people have been let down and whatever, but it does always feel that there's always discussions that always have this sort of worthy and unbearable worthiness that isn't always necessary. What I find about your writing is it feels free. It feels free from almost from like word sentence to sentence. It feels like it's escaping from itself constantly as you move. And I think that's really interesting for the times we're in now. Is there's a fear, there's a terror. No one wants to say anything. Everyone's sort of, even in conversations, you can feel this sense of fear in lots of situations one finds oneself in. But with your writing, it just feels completely free of itself. And does that feel like? Does that description resonate with you? And because even I was finding from line to line in East, I'm saying something that's quite shocking, and then it's like you're just upping the ante word
Yes,
sentence
it's
after
shocking.
sentence, and
But you make it funny, you make it humorous.
yes,
So it's like the seduction of Sylve. I'll descend on thee like a moon probe, our planet of delights fleshy. And that's how you do it. You make it like a song. The length of, I forget now, there's something, but I tend to down like, oh yeah, I'll chart thy surfaces until thou criest from within thy depths. Oh my, what dost thou do? Fluting gurgled falsettos from thy lips of coral. So then I said, then I do this mime of my, I forget if there was a line for it. I do this mime of this great gigantic, and then it's so big that I can barely hold the weight of it. So I wobble off stage, actually go off stage and wobble back on the stage. It was so ridiculous, but it made it humorous and made it the most charming.
yeah.
Especially the cunt speech.
Speech is
I read. You read Les, didn't you? And I read Mike. The cunt speech is quite something.
It's just shocking. I couldn't do it myself. I had to physicalize it so much. I'd physicalize it to an extent. So I say, a bit difficult at the beginning. You fancy going down in a line? No, you don't want to go down the line soon. You know, with dodgy pussy. So I said, I disagree with Les. We always found good cunts on the Lyceum. Friendly cunt, clean cunt, jeans and nigger stuff full of nice, juicy, hairy cunt, handfuls of cunt, amazing cunt. Oh yeah. Ooh. Hey, Les, if it's not back, bring in a searchlight. I get in. I go through, and then, hello, anyone in there? I'm trapped inside the pussy, see? So if I did this, then I can't get out. Help. So I start climbing. I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out. So the thing became hysterical. Whereas the first time I did it, I could barely say the words. I mean, because the rest of it had changed the verse. That one speech, I hadn't, so I had to overdo it somehow to get through it. But when I got to Amazing Cunt, I didn't imagine seeing this gigantic cunt and then slowly opening it up. Sometimes I'd roll it a bit, then I'd roll it there. Then I'd crawl in the cunt, and then it was shut behind me.
When you're writing East, what's happened? Are you just letting go? Do you have a process to that?
Well, no, I had
Do you just feel like, go and say it, Stephen, say it, write it? As you're writing those lines.
some of it, but when I knew I had a theme, that each had to have a special moment of their life, which was the most amazing. Cecile talks about being trapped, I for one would like to be a fella, unwholesome, both in word and deed, stand around one finger, car keys, tinkling on. So they had themes. And Mum talked about when she went to the movies, and then suddenly this guy puts her hand on his dick, and it said, "How Mike, dirty bastard."
There's an incredibly funny moment in it when the mum is in bed with the husband.
Oh, yes.
And she says, "Are you having sex with me?" Are you fucking me? And he says no, but he is.
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
Yeah. I remember even over Zoom, Alec read that moment. Very funny. So we got So this is amazing. So you wrote East, and then you wrote West, and the characters follow through, and they carry on into West.
Yes.
And then you wrote Greek. Is that right? Is that sort of right order? And
So this is a sort of late 70s, I think.
Yeah, about that. Yes.
One of the things we're kind of really interested in, as people want to accompany me and Ollie, is kind of re-educating or educating everyone into a connection to our history, our classical history, and our and the rich history that we all kind of stand upon, and many of us, particularly our generation, know nothing about even, right? And so why I find one of the many reasons you're so fascinating to us, Stephen, is because you feel like this character who's managed to fuse this original newness and artistic kind of present vitality with a connection to this old world and these wonderful kind of classical stories. And Greek sort of perfectly encapsulates that basically. And I just thought I wanted to sort of put that out there and say that, because I feel like that's why Stephen sort of almost represents what we're trying to say to people, is that we don't know this, we don't know the world we've come from, and no one's brave to go into a new world. And we're just sort of, it feels like we're trapped artistically.
And in Greek, you're doing that. You're taking the Oedipus story, retelling it in Tottenham.
Because I was always fascinated by the story. Such a wonderful and bizarre and frightening and peculiar story. I wanted to tell that story, but I thought maybe tell it in modern terms. So that's why I had Eddie with his little council house with his mum and dad, and they're just sitting there with the sister who plays another part, plays the Sphinx, and they just so I had them sitting at a table and I always like the stillness. They're dead still, then suddenly, so I was spawned in Tufnell Park. That's no more than a stone's throw from the Angel, a monkey's far from Tottenham, or a bottle of phlegm from Stamford Hill. It's a cesspit, right? A scumhole, dense with the drabs who prop up the corner pubs, the kind of pub where ye old arseholes assemble, the boring turds, as say for Christmas with clubs. Oh, my mum did that, so start off giving him introduction. So I thought maybe that's what he'd do. That's what he'd do in the East End. He'd stay with clubs at Christmas. That. And then one day my dad had the story to tell me. And his face hung there his eyes were hanging like a soggy, worn-out testicle. And then his dad says, "Go on, Dad, you want to chat to him? When you was a nipper, we went to a fortune teller. Don't laugh. A bit of a thrill, an Easter fair." And then says the fortune teller looks down and he says, "Oh, I don't see, it's not very good." I don't remember the lines. "But your son's going to kill you have a bunk up with his mum. He said, bunk up with his mum. So he said, it's a terrible story. So then that's why once I got into it, I changed it in that way. And so that the old guy then, Eddie leaves. He goes out into the world. But this is Berkoff going out into the world. I went out, and then I described the pubs, bombs being thrown everywhere, IRA and all this stuff. And so eventually I felt a bit thirsty, so I went to this cafe for a cup of tea. Then I got the two waitresses, the two girls. And then the father who he kills, the manager. And he says, hey, my tea's a bit cold, isn't it? I asked for a cake, and it ain't turned up. The time it happens, then my tea's cold. Then the manager says, oh, you're making a fuss, eh? I've had enough of you for... They have an argument. And then he kills him through words. Bollock, bang, punch, hit, shove. So he did it all through language. And then the dad's killed. So I follow the plot. And then the waitress who becomes his wife. So she's so carried away because she suddenly falls in love with him. That's a wonderful story, the way she falls in love with him.
Yeah.
And I know I'll miss him, you know. He used to, and he comes to bed at night, vomiting all over the sheets. And so it's crazy language. So he says, I'm going to open up a cafe and make the biggest sandwiches in the world. We're going to turn London on its arse. We're going to do this and do that. So it was, meanwhile, the Irish had thrown the bombs. And then it gets to the end. When you haven't had a reading of Greek yet?
We haven't done
No,
I
have read it. Yeah, we should definitely.
It's astonishing.
It's very.
And he goes to the house to greet his mum and dad and say, oh, it's good to see you. And he says, oh, you're doing good, son, yeah. And then he tells a story, but the mother has told the story of how she lost her little kid, that they're on this pleasure boat that used to go from the Tower Bridge to Southend-on-Sea, when an old German stray bomb blew it up. And she lost her little boy. And the parents lost the little boy. But he was found clinging to his little teddy bear. And he says, could I have a butcher's of that teddy bear? She says, of course. I've kept it for years. And it reminds him, it's him. This teddy bear reminds him. He's the one. Then Dad confirms the story that they're on the boat and he lost their little kid. And then she found the little kid. Therefore, his wife must be you. So I made it all fit in. And he thought, oh, fuck. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, I'm shagging my own mother. Oh, this is terrible, terrible, terrible. So he goes, and then he thinks, I'm going to end it. And what I do, I'm going to stab my eyes out. I can't bear this. I'm going to pull my eyes out and pull them out. So he goes to take the eyes, and then he says, fuck all that. So what? I've shagged my mum. The worst things have happened in this world. I'm going to go back to her. I'm going to go back. So he runs. This is the most gigantic run on the spot. It's a mime run, but he's running. And I've used this twice, once in Greek and once in Agamemnon. And there are very few actors can even do it. And he's running because it's beautiful. It's like a sculpture. And he's running and his heart pounding, running. It's love I feel. It's love. It's love for your breast, for your eyes, for your lips, for your cunt first, head first, and then foot first. Well, I can't remember quite that. First, if you left foot first, Holy Mother. It's so astonishing, this ending. I tell you, people were knocked blistering sideways. So I did it. Here got me reasonable reviews.
Were people offended by it?
Yeah, some were.
Right.
Hey, there was some critic. He's got a short name and can't. He said, "Oh, it was disgusting. Yuck." That's all he could say is one word: yuck. He's a poet, not less. Did it in LA. They went mad. Oh, because we did it in a fringe theatre. Didn't have a very good act, but they went mad. Oh, they went mad for got every award. Got all the awards: best play, best ensemble.
And were you competing with playwrights? Because it was quite interesting when you were speaking about Hamlet. I was thinking about the idea of you and Jonathan Pryce doing your versions of Hamlet across town.
Yeah.
And that kind of how exciting that is in the way actors almost competing. And I think that's quite
Yeah,
very healthy actually.
Yeah.
And so did you have rival? And Shakespeare was, competing with Marlowe,
Johnson.
and then you had Burbage competing with Edward Allen, who was the other big actor at the time. So were you competing with playwrights? And because your plays are so unique. And I remember when I was even a teenager reading them, I did find them quite shocking, and I was like, I was excited by them, but they were quite shocking. So we've talked about your plays, and when we could talk about your plays, there's so much to talk about in there. And I just wanted to sort of mention some of your screen work, Stephen, because I think it's quite incredible amount of kind of films and TV shows you've been in, and the actors you've worked with over the years. So your screen work includes Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, Octopussy, Beverly Hills Cop, Rambo, Revolution, The Craze, Star Trek, The Tourist, Doctor Who, and many more. And just some of the actors you've worked with, which it's just incredible. I was just going through these last night. I was writing down all the people you work with, and the new ones kept popping up. So you worked with Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, Sean Connery, Jane Seymour, Roger Moore, Roger Mitchum, Guy Pearce, Joan Collins, Johnny Depp, Angelina Jolie, Mickey Rourke, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Diana Rigg, Ray Winston, John Hurt, and there's more. There's many more. Have you worked with Olivier?
Never.
Never. Christopher Plummer?
Yes.
You work with Christopher Plummer. Okay. It's just an incredible kind of amount of people to work with. So if we can, maybe what's useful is to move into kind of acting and just your thoughts on acting. You did an interview with London Live in 2015, and it's such a. I wondered if we could we play it to you, or
No.
you don't need to. Okay, so you did an interview with London Live. In it, you said young actors are so ghastly, uninteresting, boring, tedious. They know nothing about their culture. They know nothing about the legends of the past. Do you stand by that? And could you? I just wondered if we could talk about that. It's a very interesting interview.
I don't know why I said those rather defamatory things about my acting colleagues. I think part of the reason was I was there to promote the play, which was called Dinner with Saddam. And there was a couple of young actors in the dressing room who were playing more or less walk-on parts. But they were very charming young men. And we used to talk. And because I had a whole act, because I was only in mainly the whole of the second act. And we chatted, and we talked, well, who are your favorite actors? I know, I said, maybe Brando, maybe Pacino. What about English actors? What about the great actors of the past? Maybe Olivier, Gielgud, Richardson, Burton, O'Toole. Well, I've seen them on film. And what about, have you ever read the history of some of the great old actors like Henry Irving? He used to run a theatre at this wonderful building still there at the Lyceum. I don't know. Henry who? I said, what about Edmund Kean? He was a legend, and people even have written books about him. Even Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a play. Oh, I don't know that. Didn't know. So I felt it wasn't their fault altogether, but disillusioned. I felt you'd only learn how to act by really investigating not the stories of the past, the history of the past, the reviews of the past. And if you read the reviews of some of the great critics, I forget that maybe it was Hazlitt, I'm not sure, when he said, when you see Edmund Kean, it's like seeing Shakespeare via blasts of lightning. It was like sudden and profound illumination. And these guys, oh, I don't know, I haven't heard of him. I didn't mean to insult them because they will learn. But that was probably a little bit of an intemperate comment. But I felt that you've got to learn your past. When you talk to musicians, who I admire, of course, as maybe the higher level of the creative arts, to learn to play a piano or a violin, whatever, they know their history. They don't just talk about composers. They don't just flap on about Bach and Mozart and Verdi and whoever. They know who were the best conductors, who was the lead violinist, who was the greatest singers, who worked at La Scala in Milan. They know these things. And I'm always amazed when I hear these musicians go on about their chosen idols. Because when you look into history and you see not only what they went through, which in times of King were quite stupendously horrific, and the way they would study and study and study until he got on the stage when he did Shylock, his first performance at the Covent Garden Theatre or the Haymarket, and he stunned the audience so much that the owners of the theatre had to promote him and keep increasing his money. And then he said, well, next week, could you give us, next week, not next year, next week, perhaps you could give us Othello? Oh, yes, of course, because he'd been doing this for years in touring repertory, years and years.
Yeah.
So the following week, 2 nights of Othello. Then the following week, maybe he did maybe a couple of Hamlets. Then the following week, another and another and another. And then he went down a little bit, as he must, with that kind of ferocious lifestyle and work. And then later in his life, he did a play by Middleton or Marston, is it? A new way to pay old debts. Now this got a tremendous leading role, phenomenal, ferocious, dynamic, really man, and he played. And the audience, some of the audience passed out. So one day, Byron, was it Lord Alfred Byron, came in and saw this performance. He thought, what a human being. What a man. Is Keane. He's only about 5'7", thick black hair. But he held the audience. So Byron made himself known to Keane and went to see him backstage. And Keane was so flattered, Lord Byron. But he was a bit intimidated. So when Byron invited him to his dinner parties for his friends to meet the great Edmund Kean, sometimes Kean couldn't even turn up. He felt so intimidated, only an actor compared. But they did keep a relationship going. And one day, Byron had a sword engraved to Edmund Kean, Lord Byron. and gave it to Keane. Said, "This because I cherish what you do, and please accept." Oh, thank you. He had the sword. Then Keane died, then Byron died, and then the sword somehow disappeared into the kind of attics of the families. And then one day it came into the hands of the Alan Terry family, of which Gielgud is the nephew. And Gielgud suddenly had, oh no, what's happened? It came into the Terry family, and then when Gielgud played Hamlet, one of the Terry families said,
And the Terry family is what's it?
Ellen Terry.
Ellen Terry.
Ellen
We
Terry.
had a room at RADA called the Ellen
yeah.
Terry room. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And then one of the families says, Sir John, allow us to present you with this sword. For it's such a magnificent performance of Hamlet. So very happy to receive that. Very good. And years later, Olivier was giving his Richard III. I think it was at the Old Vic. And then Gielgud saw it and said, oh my God. Oh, this is unbelievable. So he went back home, took the sword, went backstage and said to Daddy, you're my dearest and sweetest, beloved friend. Please take the sword. And Olivier was so proud. Said, oh, thank you, Sir John. I did, and I took it and put it into his kind of room of baubles and treasures. And then the years passed.
Yeah. I'm hoping that any minute you're going to tell me that it's on the wall here. It's not.
Yeah.
It's here.
It was given to me by Olivier himself. So, I'm kidding.
Oh.
You had us.
I had you, but I have something equally as good.
Okay.
But then, Olivier, years passed. Actors came. Gielgud did other great performances. Christopher Plummer turned up. O'Toole did stonking performances, though some also less popular ones. Alec McCowan and all these. And somebody said, a reporter maybe, said, Sir Lawrence, this sword was given to you in appreciation of your astounding work. And it seems like a wonderful tradition that every time somebody turns up that has ignited the British public, the holder of the sword should present it to the next. He said, yes, but I haven't found anyone. He said, but of all the people, there's wonderful performances. Yes, but not that would really impel me to part with this sword because I have. So he never farted with that.
So
quite symbolic.
Where is this sword? Do we know?
I think it's possible that John Plowright has it in their cottage.
We need to get it back. We need to kind of get it back.
We need to earn it back.
Somebody has got to give it to someone.
Yeah, much better than an Oscar, isn't it, to get that sword? So in that thing, Stephen, you said that it's a quagmire of nothingness now, and I think that resonated with me personally, and I think probably with a few people there is a sense of the nothingness. There's a quagmire of nothingness. How can actually I'll just say two questions. I know we probably need to wrap this up quite soon, right? So you saw the period where the American actors really came through, the kind of famous screen actors of like Pacino, Hoffman. They followed Brando, maybe sort of seen as like method actors. They kind of came through and dominated cinema, and then Olivier and Gielgud. They were in films with these people, but their styles, it was a sort of changing of styles. Did that affect, did you see the styles change? Because what I'm kind of curious about is how the new screen styles, the sort of method, super naturalistic and believable style, did it influence theatrical performances, or did it kill anything in the theatre scene? Did everyone?
No, I think it certainly people saw it and were excited.
Right.
It would have affected theatrical performances without question, because the films that were coming up, these performances and method performances were so theatrical. Although they were naturalistic, there was such heightened naturalism that they took on they went to another level. So Brando's performance was a theatrical performance in Streetcar, certainly on the waterfront. George C. Scott, his performance, even in the film he did with Paul Newman, where he's what was it?
The gambler.
Something about
The Hustler.
the Hustler.
That's it.
Now, I don't know if you ever remember George C. Scott in that.
No, I don't know him.
You don't know George C. Scott?
I don't
feel
know the
like
name.
we're going to get told
Wow,
off.
George C. Scott. He's the greatest actor on earth.
We're stuck in this quagmire of nothing.
Jesus, George C.
George
Scott.
C. Scott. Okay, we'll check.
Patton, for example.
Oh, I've seen Patton.
Yeah, I've seen that too, but I can't picture him.
Is he Patton? Does he play Patton in the film?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
and many others. But I saw him on stage. He's quite brilliant.
American.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there is. It was exciting and theatrical in its own way. Okay. What would be the remedy to the modern dramatic scene and actors in this? How do we solve?
If you were king of theatre for a day, what would you do to?
Yeah, and
get
training
better?
and idea, anything you can kind of.
Well, what I would do is to arrange a kind of union of leading actors who are consulted as a kind of board, and to impel them, in order to improve acting, to direct. That only when you've been an actor on a high level can you not only direct, but you are teaching. Now, directors who just come from Oxbridge and are doing Shakespeare, they can maybe direct. Some have directed, some quite well, but they cannot teach. You need to hear it from the horse's mouth. So in future, any people who have merely academic qualifications are not allowed to direct other actors. It should be forbidden.
You have to have some
Nice.
skin.
It's forbidden, okay, yeah.
Skin in the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any more than I would allow myself to have my hernia or ulcer operated on by an academic. I'd want someone who's been in the battlefield, who's done this.
Yes.
How can you allow somebody to sit on their ass and say, why don't you try it, Dad? It's appalling. And the cost to the nation is monstrous. There are very few mavericks who have managed to do this and created some interesting work. I don't know how they did it, but they did, using marvelous imagination and experience of watching. There's like maybe Peter Brook, maybe Tyrone Guthrie. But this, once you have actors who have been there, who know what it's like to stand on that stage on the first night, these helping you, that's what you know. That will change it overnight. So we get rid of all the parasites.
Absolutely.
Get rid of them.
Drain the swamp.
Drain the swamp. I mean, some of them I've seen some of their work, not terrible, but maybe Peter Hall wasn't always terrible. But the money, the cost, the sets is unbelievable. And the waste. So that's what you should do. Someone like Ian McKellen, I don't think he wants to direct. He's been brainwashed into thinking, oh, it's not for him. But he should be compelled because he has so much to give. So that's what you need. That's how you start.
So you're arguing for almost the like reintroduction of the actor, manager, director.
Totally,
thing.
actor, manager,
Yeah,
totally and utterly.
Yes, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Irving, when he used to direct, he had all the actors sat there, and for the first reading, he'd read every single part himself
Yeah. I did read this.
and
about
say,
every
"This
other
is how I want it to be done." You
I'm
know,
up for that.
I can't remember where I read that, but I did read that somewhere. That's really funny.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. This is how it should be done.
There's
So-
actually, sorry, just to say, there's it's wonderful hearing your thoughts on acting. There's a lot more of those thoughts on acting, and sort of, I think there's a meditation on acting in your wonderful play Corpse, which is available on your website, which is about
Yes.
lots of these great actors, Olivier, Richardson, Gielgud,
Of course.
in a kind of afterlife situation. So, and people can buy that from your website. They can buy
Please,
an
yes,
audio
that
of
would be good.
Thoroughly recommend that. A wonderful meditation on acting and
Yes.
profession.
Yeah, and it'd be great just encourage anyone to read Stephen's plays and sort of learn about Steven Berkoff. And yeah, I think we probably need to wrap this up, right? We can't chat to you all day as much as we'd like to. But thank you.
Because I'm a bit exhausted.
Yeah,
I
bet.
bet. Thank you.
Oh,
Stephen.
thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
It was fascinating.
Thanks for talking to us.
I hope it's for use and you can use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we should keep more in touch with each other.
Yeah.
We'd love that. As I say, we're sort of kind of making this transition into doing some new writing, as well as having gone back and done, classic stuff, which we still want to do as well. Like, we want to start doing some new writing as well, and yeah, it'd be great to work with you.
And we can talk another point about maybe Shakespeare and be more specific about.
Yeah, next time we can do another one.
I kind of really wanted you to do a Hamlet when you were talking. I was just waiting for a moment to go, can you do a bit of Hamlet? But maybe we'll have to do it another time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, all right. I'll finish it up.
Yeah. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I! Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit, and from its working all his vision wand, tears in his eyes, distractions in his aspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing. For Hecuba. What's Hecuba to he? Or he to Hecuba, he should weep for her.